If y'all are looking for a comic that has a really interesting kind of like slice of Americana in it, I highly recommend Superman for All Seasons. And that's a review. Good night. I'm just kidding. Apparently this was a series that came out in the latter half of the 2000s, like I think 2015 or something like that, I think. But again, gas station, love that they're selling reprints. You can tell by here. But this is called Superman for All Seasons #1. And I'm going to say this now. What irks my Girk and chaps my hide and frosts me up the walls, it says special edition. I want you to keep that in mind as we get towards the end. And now remember, it says special edition. And initially, I got it for $3 at the gas station, but initially they were asking $4.99 for this comic. Keep that in mind. But let's dive into it. And one thing about the cover, at first you're just kind of thinking, oh, that's kind of rough. But this is going back to Superman's origin. And I like this from the aspect is it very much has that Max Fleischer old school. When did that show come out? It was like the early 40s, I think, or late 40s. Because Superman was a radio show before it became the TV. I think it was a radio show before it even became a comic. I can't remember. Let me know it down in the description. Anyway, or in this description. What is that thing called where we talk the description? The comments. Jeez Louise, I haven't had enough coffee. I'm trying, folks. Let's take a sip and let's get into this. This page right here reminds me very much of John Byrne's when they rebooted Superman in the 80s, when John Byrne took over that first Man of Steel run. And I can't remember. I think it's towards the end when we first see Superman. It might have been that, or maybe I'm getting it mixed up and I'm thinking of Dark Knight Returns when we cut away to Superman and he's standing in Reagan's office and we see this. Anyway, it's one of those, but that's what first came to mind. So let's listen. Folks tend to call him the Man of Steel nowadays. I guess that he's the most famous person in the world. Not that he was ever interested in being famous in the first place. Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. Change the course of mighty rivers, faster than a speeding bullet. We knew he was special, but people will talk. Believe it or not, there was a time before all that, when he was just a man's son. Love that. And me now being a dad, this book really spoke to me. So this is Jeph Loeb writing, Tim Sell doing the art, colors by Bjarne Hansen, letters by Richard Starkings, and then Superman was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. I went back because I never heard of this. And this is one thing that chaps my hide without, let's just say, Wizard Magazine. You have to subscribe to different comic channels on social media now, or keep up on comic websites, as where you can just go to the back in the day, you would just go to the grocery store, for example, and pick up Wizard. Because that's what I did. Because we didn't have comic shops, as I've talked about. We didn't really have like book stores, like how now a lot of days there's Barnes and Noble. I grew up in a small town. Like now, 2026, it is called a city. But back in the day, in the 80s, I remember it was called village in terms of population size. So comic shops came and went quick, and there was no, like I said, established bookstores. Like people would try to create like little fancy ones, but they'd always fall because it was a retirement town. Anyway, but in the grocery store, they always had Wizard Magazine. So even though I couldn't keep up with comics regularly, even though I tried to when I saw them, Wizard, after the direct market happened into the 90s, this was the only way I was able to really kind of keep up. So when we went on a trip to another city, I could grab comics at comic shops. That said, I know that was long-winded. I apologize. I wanted to say all that to say this. I looked up this book. Oh, hold on. Antidote. I never heard of this. So there was no real promotion for it that I remember. I mean, I've been collecting steadily since, I can't even remember now. But I don't ever remember any mention of a Superman for All Seasons. And so I hate that a lot of these books that are really good or different take, I don't see advertised. Now, with that said, from what I understand is after, they did Batman, not year one, what was it called? Long Halloween, and then they did the subsequent parts. They decided that they told, a different origin of Batman kind of trailing off from year one, and they kind of wanted to do that with Superman. So this is them kind of putting the band back together to get that vibe. Now, I love this scenery right here. Absolutely beautiful. Now, remember, the narrator said a man's son, my son, Clark Kent. And so we see Smallville, the Kent farm. Beautifully rendered. Now, I love Tim Sale's art. I'm going to say that real quick. I love Tim Sale's artwork. Long Halloween, freaking, But when I first opened this book, I saw it, I was like, nice. And then we cut to Clark's face. I was like, holy crap, what is that? Like, my art skills, I haven't drawn in a long time, so I can't say that, I'm Picasso. But my God, look at the hands. And I just feel like Clark has too much face for those eyes. Like, don't get me wrong, the background was beautiful, but that face, that's probably the only thing in this book that going through is I have a hard time liking this face. Oh my God. He looks like something you'd see in Minecraft, in my opinion. He's just got that very wide looking face. Ugh. So, let's get past that. And see, it looks a little bit better in different ones. But anyway, this is Jonathan Kent narrating about his son. And I don't want to go through all of it. He says, one night years ago, a terrible whistling, loudest thing you'd ever heard, came out of the sky. We drove over to the North Field and found some kind of rocket ship. To this day, I can't think of any other way to describe it. Inside it was a baby, and not a scratch on him. Never mind what kind of fool puts a baby in a rocket in the first place. It takes an entirely different kid kind of thinking to then decide to keep the child and call it your own. But that's Martha for you. Stubborn as a mule, twice as set in her ways. Wonderful woman, marry her all over again if that's what she wanted. It's okay, we read it all. But it shows the heart of Jonathan Kent. And I love how Clark says, can I help? And just, well, the boy's got a lot of Martha in him, and let's leave it at that. Now again, face, oh my God. But here, this right here, if you really look at it, like stop and get past the face, this looks like something you would see from a Norman Rockwell painting. Very Americana. And what is her name? Lana Lang. And then the Kents, and then Lana's, I guess, mother or something like that. It was springtime in Kansas. Clark was finishing out his last year in high school. Seemed like only yesterday he was that baby in the rocket. And I can feel that. I feel that in my soul. Because I see my kid and I'm just like, crap, when did you get so tall, my boy? And so I'm very much empathizing with Jonathan Kent. But what I love about this is, okay, we see everyone together, but then we see how Clark's just sneaking a treat to the pup. And Lana's like, Clark, what are you up to? Who, me? And so we see how Lana is smitten for him. And while all that's going on, we see the two sit on the porch talking about Clark. Want to talk about what went on between you and Clark this afternoon? He's changing. The boy. He's different now. What do you mean, Jonathan? We both knew that one day we'd have to face this, Martha. I just didn't think it'd be so soon. There's just so much we don't know, Martha. Every day becomes stronger with powers and abilities that don't seem to have any limitations. What are we dealing with here? Jonathan Kent, you don't have enough faith in Clark or in us. We brought him up right. Maybe we did, Martha. Maybe. Jonathan, you don't think he can hear us? The boy's asleep. Anyways, his bedroom is clear on the other side of the house. How could he possibly hear us? So I love that. Clark's just listening. And even though this is Superman, I love that the creative team here puts it as when you are a kid changing and your parents don't know how to deal with you. That's the light that we see here. And when you look around his room, he's got like the cute girl poster. He's got his airplanes hung up in his room, baseball poster, everything that you would see in a typical kid's room. And it just, again, why we love Superman is because he could do all these great things like Jonathan talked about at the beginning, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. But here we see a son who's concerned about what his parents are talking about. And he doesn't know how to process it because he doesn't know anything about his past. He doesn't know anything about Krypton. It's just a nice little way. And then, of course, another look at a slice of Americana, small town. Sometimes when the corn was planted, it shot up too soon. The roots hadn't taken hold, so the stalk couldn't support its own weight. The corn would turn sour. I don't know if Clark knew how lucky he was growing up in a place like Smallville. Then we see him talking to Lana. Clark had known Lana Lang all his life. Her Aunt Ruth, difficult as it was, raised her right. Martha always said Lana had her cap on being with Clark, but I never saw it. Pete Ross, on the other hand, was the sort of kid that went down like castor oil. A little went a long way. And I just love that Southern way of saying how, a little bit of someone's just enough. Now, as he's going through his day, his powers start to manifest. So just like, think of it like X-Men. When you hit puberty and powers start showing. So he goes over to cut his hair, breaks the scissors. He's able to look through the barber's mirror into the malt shop, seeing Lana and Pete talking, and he's just like, wow. And again, beautiful artwork all around, but look at I hate to say it, like the whole thing here, the barber's face, the cop's face, they look good because they're just rendered, they look human. Now, I don't know if this was like Tim Sale's way of trying to make Clark look otherly, but when I look at this looks like something you would see like in the Far Side. If y'all remember those calendars and the jokes, it just looks like something you would draw for Far Side cartoons. But here, that aside, I just love how Clark just doesn't know what to do with himself. And then here, this hit me hard. This part right here is what really made me fall in love with this book. There are things about being a father I'd remember for all my days. How I held him in my arms as a baby, awkward to start, like carrying a chicken, then finally getting the hang of it. The morning I found him standing up at his crib for the very first time, just bursting with pride with a smile as big as the moon. Watching him push back the screen door and toddle out on his own into the yard, talking to the dog and the ants and the porch swing. The more I thought about those things, the more I thought of Clark as a normal boy. But my son could bend still in his bare hands. And as much as I wanted to tell him that all the answers in his life and the next could be found in Smallville, all I could promise Clark was that his mother and I would love him always. Sorry. When I was younger, I could find that like as like an emotional thing. But now that I'm a dad and I'm seeing my boy grow up so much, and knowing that eventually, as much like how John here says that all his answers could be found in Smallville, you can't hold on to your child. You have to let him go and grow. And I don't even want to think about that right now. Tell you what, that's some hard shit that I don't want to think about right now. I just leave it at that. That hit home a little too rough. Anyway, sorry. Now into action. So a tornado happens. And of course, Clark helps. Sorry. Trying to get myself back together here. And Clark realizes more of his abilities. Now, here's where I was talking about at the beginning of the review, where I said, remember, this is called Special Edition, and it was $4.99, right? So the book essentially ends with him saving this gas station attendant that he's grown up with and knows him by name. And it says, continued in the Superman for All Seasons Collected Edition, available now. I went back and looked, and this is not the end of this issue. Like the original Superman for All Seasons, there's more. It's like him actually going into Metropolis and growing up. And then the book ends with Lex Luthor eyeing Superman. That's how the original #1 ends. So this pissed me off, saying special edition. If you want to call it a special edition, then do something like keep the whole story and then maybe give us some extra pages, like maybe some of Tim Sale's early sketch concepts and like Jeph Loeb's notes of how he wanted to take his ideas for Superman's origin. That would have been a special edition. But to call this a special edition at $5 and only give you half of the comic, that is what you call a bait and switch, in my opinion, my friends. That aside, sorry, we've been down an emotional roller coaster. Sorry. This makes me want to read this book more. Because again, the artwork, I love how Tim Sell very much made this try to look like a Mark Fleischer's Superman cartoon. Now, for me, because I'm old as dirt, John Byrne's retelling of Superman's origin in the 80s will always be the one that I hold near and dear to me, as well as Alan Moore's Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow and Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman. But it's nice to see that we have those particular stories that we still hold near and dear. And you can even throw in Alan Moore's oh crap. We've gone over the book, the Christmas issue where Mongol puts the thing on Superman's chest. I can't remember what the man who has everything. This, I feel, if more people get into it, is going to end up in the annals of those giant Superman stories. I actually want to read the rest of this, so I'm gonna, in my travels, gonna try to pick up this. I don't remember how many issues it is, but this feels like something special that needs to be that just needs to be safe for posterity reasons. So if you guys have enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or wherever you like to get your action figures and comics and pick up this series. It's definitely worth your time. And if you've enjoyed this review, really would appreciate if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little super bell next subscribe, that way as I get to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel and I love talking with you all and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments or the socials, which I'll make sure the links down in the description. Speaking of, if you enjoy what I do and you'd like to help support the channel, I have also left a PayPal tip jar link down in the description. And if not, either way, still appreciate you stopping by and checking out the video. So with all that said, hope y'all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading and happy hunting, everyone.